Tomb Raider Underworld is often considered one of the weakest links in the franchise. After all, this is the game that made the devs do a reboot only after the third year of the previous reboot. But did they really deserve it? Or perhaps fans were a little too harsh on the game, wanting impossible promises from the devs that they could never keep. I have a lot to say about this game. I'd recommend that you see my Legend and Anniversary video before watching this one, since they share a lot of pros and cons. Or better yet, just watch my whole Tomb Raider videos. Bring coffee or something, and let's go. While Tomb Raider Underworld feels and plays like the previous two, it's designed much more like the early games in this franchise. The game doesn't focus much on action, but rather on the exploration and uncover mysterious places and puzzles. I liked most of the recent Tomb Raider games before this one, but they almost all felt way too easy, and not on the Tomb Raider difficulty. Thank God, Underworld fixes that by giving you one of the hardest Tomb Raider games ever, and definitely the hardest modern Tomb Raider game. You don't remember that, trust me, go play it today. Sometimes it gives Tomb Raider 3 a butt kick or gives Tomb Raider 4 a toy to play with. Difficulty starts with the puzzles and reach other aspects like platforming, enemy encounters, and backtracking. I died more times than I could count, and most of which I felt like it was my fault and the game were balanced, where in Anniversary it felt like the game deliberately tries to kill me. One of the major points of the difficulty is, thank God, the linearity is no more. So don't get me wrong, this is not as open as, let's say, The Last Revelation, but out of the previous 3 games, this is the most open one, and it doesn't joke around with this sandbox. There are levels that are very massive and that you have to wander around for some time until you find the right path, and it don't get tedious as well. In level 5, New Mexico, you have a bike and a sort of big sandbox, so moving from one section to another is a lot easier, and that feature alone made me appreciate the game more than the previous 2 games, because it respects that you have a brain. Now of course, not everything is wide open and Elden Ringy, since the sandbox and linearity can be a bit scripted in this game, but it's definitely a step forward in that department. Only complaint is that I wished more items could have been used to solve puzzles like before, but this entry rather takes more of a modern approach in this aspect by giving you mostly 1 or 2 items only to solve the puzzles, which is respectable and done well, but you know. Speaking about similarity, guess who's back? No idiot, it's not shady, it's backtracking. Chill out, I know what you're gonna say. After it being dumped for like what, 4 games? It's finally back, and I know some of you are gonna be pissed, but trust me, backtracking, if it's done right, could make your game a lot bigger and more in-depth. Most likely in this game you're gonna backtrack to previous area after finding items or completing your objective. Sure, sometimes it could be confusing and forced, like in level 5 where you had to go back to the starting point of the mission in a 3 hours long mission, but most times it was done with ease to give you that feeling that now you're strong enough. Oh, AOD, I'm not talking to you. Yeah, so that feeling that you overcome the thing that you couldn't before. Definitely a love letter to OG players and more of a challenge to new players. Another point of difficulty were the platforming. I loved this game approach to platforming. It's not extremely difficult where it gets tedious, and it's not very easy where it feels like very scripted and not fun friendly. It's the right amount of challenge, and that all was done because of the new Lara moves and approach, and that being Lara's ability to climb over swinging sticks and metals to perform more of a vertical moves, or Lara's ability to climb a ledge and carry on, or mirror edge style jump from one wall to another, or just jumping between 2 walls, all of which adds more depth and maturity to the platforming of this game. So most of the times I was thrilled and I was excited whenever there was a big platforming section like that amazing tower, which there are 4 different floors that you have to climb to the top of it using all the things that you learned thus far in this game to achieve your goal. Such an epic moment, and a fair one at that. Finally, and unfortunately, this is the best platforming Tomb Raider have ever reached. The only reason I said unfortunately is because I'm aware of the reboots and they're not so OG friendly in platforming, but who knows, I'll have to play them first. Anyway, it's not all fun and games. Platforming can be a bit annoying sometimes, and that majorly were because of the jumps between 2 walls, because you only have to do once or twice every 2 hours, so you'll forget that you have this ability in the first place, which made some of the most annoying feeling of not knowing where to go. But mostly, the platforming is superb. Shooting is alright. I always criticize shooting in Tomb Raider games since it's not the best and it will never be. But here it has a little more weight to it, where bullets feel like they hit and you can even hear enemies lie on the ground with heavy sound effect and stuff. but your weapons feel underpowered, and most times than none, enemies feel like bullet sponges, especially towards the end of the game. And a big issue as well is not having too much weapons to shoot from. It sucks that I can't say this word both in Arabic and English. Anyway, that thing is back, but it's tiresome and undeveloped. Like, it's so slow, and the meter is easily filled, so no need to panic. It's not bad, and most editions I really appreciate and enjoy. Also, guess who's back again? Quick time events. But in this one, it's slow time events. Basically, time and movement becomes slow, where your action have to be quick and will be detrimental of whether you live or die. Much better than the quick time events, and it only happens 3 or 2 times in the whole game, so that's that. Okay, now how does this game approach to the other big issues of the previous 2 games, which are scripted platforming, unresponsiveness, and awkward camera? Well, it doesn't fix it. Honestly, this game approach to fix these things are almost non-existent, and arguably it's worse in that aspect. The camera doesn't turn around to show you where you're supposed to go, which leaves you in confusion. Sometimes while climbing, you are not able to see where you should go, which is such a big deal in this game, and a lot of frustration comes from this issue alone. I died so many times to this awkward camera, but that's LAU for you. Is Lara still unresponsive sometimes? Well, yes. In so many sections, I died to absolute bullshit because Lara didn't want to hold a ledge or felt way too cocky to do what I told her, or do just absolute random Hulk jumps out of nowhere. Damn, I was mad at Anniversary for this. The same or worse can be seen here. Finally, the scripted platforming. Yeah, it did happen sometimes where Lara is supposed to hold something but she were not scripted to, and yes, you still can gauge your jumps and stuff like the OG games, but I guess we have to let that go because developers can never redo them, since you know these games don't work on tank control. But yeah, it is well scripted and it doesn't feel unresponsive mostly, and way less bullshit than before, but nowhere near the perfection of the early games. Also, the grappler is quite something in this, like it's terrible, not quite clear, and more times it's unpredictable. There's even an instant where you have to drop the rock, but it's super clunky, so you basically have to drag it in a specific angle, but it felt out of place and it's too specific for a good puzzle. But the grappler is cooler than before, I'll tell you that much. So yeah, the issues from the early games are unfortunately here, and sometimes they have a strong presence as well, but they don't annoy me near as they did in Anniversary, because this game's core and premise is much better than Anniversary. Finally, I hate the menus in this game. People gives AOD a hard time for featuring 2 generic menus. I wonder what you got to say about this. By far the worst one in the franchise, and you have to keep holding the analog stick to select anything in the menu, and the save and the load have slots that you have to click. What the hell? All of this to make the menus fit the frame? Man, I hate these type of menus. And it extended to the new Croft VX2, which is terrible in my opinion. You have the whole gun selection here, so you have to go to your phone after pausing the game and select the gun there. Who even does that? That's not all about the UI. When you pick stuff, it doesn't tell you what you picked. It's usually not a big issue unless you change the look of many things in this game, and it's not very clear what you picked sometimes, even key items. Plus, I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to exit the game and return to the main menu. So yeah, in short terms, I hate the UI. Also, the secrets in this game are way too many, and that's terrible. I'm not usually the type of guy to go after secrets. I only take them if I encounter them, but in this game I have seen them multiple times and choose to ignore them because you can find up to 40 secrets in one mission. What the hell were they thinking? Now I know I sound a little angry for this game that I love in the late parts of this video, but dear god, does this game dip when you reach a second half. Everything becomes less and less impressive. Bugs and issues start to appear, and the game overall becomes less polished and less inspiring the more you play it. I don't know what happened. Were they out of time or something? Or were they just thinking let's give the players the hardest time ever for no reason? So on level 4, which is the new Mexico level, the game does a difficulty spike out of nowhere, which is quite crazy and non-pacing friendly, and most of the objectives become very unclear and hard, with sometimes excessive backtracking. There's an instant in level 5 you had to pick this little thing in the biggest Tomb Raider level ever. Can you imagine that? So you can just guess my frustration when I found it laying in the ground here. Easily missable. Not only that, the same mission you had to do this jump, which is very forced and not designed well. Again, no need to tell you about my frustration, especially since I was liking this level. The whole section could have been removed and replaced for all I care about, and the autosave is crazier than before in this game. So if you reach an area, the game auto-save itself, so returning to the previous area is a no-go, even if you're on the wrong path. Boom, save. So do the whole section again, and for this level, the enemies respawn, and that mission, my friend, lasted almost 3 hours, which is quite a chunk of this game's length. And the mission after it has some cool moments like that tower, but unfortunately the next area is uninspired and feels empty, and some jumps are just bullshit. Straight out of Anniversary. The mission after it is too short, like 4 minutes only. Now into the last mission, and it's perhaps the worst mission in the whole game. So the devs basically wanted you to die and lose your time with platforming, and I wouldn't wonder if Satan himself designed these levels. And the glitches, platform, and enemies shooting at you 24/7, yeah, I didn't enjoy it the slightest. I was yelling for the game to end at that point. Too bad. If the game just kept the quality, it would have been much different, and it would be much better than what we finally got. But even with this lackluster half, I would still say the gameplay is worth it. With the hardest Tomb Raider since maybe Chronicles or The Last Revelation, and with some great platforming sections and some tedious with some cool moments in the later half, when I finished it, I was glad for it, and everything I mentioned will be less annoying in my second playthrough, which I'm willing to do when I have more free time. So give it a try, definitely. Now moving into what this game secretly does well.
You can die too!
Lara, you really are a woman after my own heart.
So it's the only Legend continuation, and in a way it's Anniversary continuation as well, since you know, Natla appear and stuff. So Lara wants to find her mother after we discovered by Amanda in Legend that she is still alive in a place called Avalon. We later found out that this place is called Helheim. Scandinavian stuff, you know. The story also heavily focused on the Scandinavian legends, especially big figures like Thor, and it all ties beautifully to the game's current story and to the gameplay. Characters feel more mature compared to the other Tomb Raider games. Lara is still strict and focused as ever. Zip is quite annoying, but I do understand him here, unlike in Legend. So is Alistair. Amanda is not as stupid and one-dimensional as she once was in Legend. Also, the connection to Anniversary by having Natala is quite brilliant to give OG players an extended vision of Tomb Raider 1. All in all, I find the story good in this one. It's gonna break no Red Dead or Bioshock records by no means, but solid enough and amazing for a Tomb Raider game. Also, it does have some nice attention to details that I really appreciate. Lara puts her hand and legs exactly on the rocks, or how the animation handle itself in water, and especially how you can move into the direction that you want in water. Also, you can sprint, so yeah. And it's needless to say that the soundtrack of this game is perhaps my second best one, only after Legend, and perhaps even better than Legend. It feels epic, like what the hell, it's not even fair. Well done, Crystal, really well done. I can see why they focused in reboots on the story that much. It's because they're damn good at it. It's damn near perfection at that time. Areas are straight out of heaven, jungles feels cold, water are well detailed, Lara model looks amazing, the best one yet, no doubt about it. She even shows some maturity in the forehead.
Misogynistic.
Are you saying I'm not shaming,
you?
I'm just pointing things out, chill out. And I find myself stopping sometimes to appreciate the locations more and more. I don't know how to describe it well, but if you tell me this game was released in 2014, I wouldn't find it hard to believe. It's worth noting that this game was released in 2008, remember? So that's it. It's hard to tell you how much I'm both angry and impressed by this game. The difficulty and puzzles are interesting, and the diversified locations are amazing in this game. The platforming should be studied by new games, and how it strikes a good balance between a challenge and impressiveness. The many needed improvements are done well to make it one of the best Tomb Raider games. That said, I'm not unaware of the stupidity and the noticeably worse second half of this game. No game dipped that hard in this franchise, but overall, I'm impressed and well pleased by this game. Much hate for this game is not necessary, but some of it is well deserved. I'd say play this game if you haven't, or if you have played it in the past and dropped it, return to it. You'll appreciate it more, hopefully, since it goes out for like what, $1 or $2 only. Anyway, this game took me 8 hours and 39 minutes to finish, the second shortest one in the franchise, only after Legend, but it didn't feel like it dragged or anything. First half amazing, second half shows some clear design flaws, unfortunately, but that's it. If you haven't watched my other Tomb Raider videos, checking them out would really makes me happy. I've made like like 9 videos on this franchise so far. By the way, thank you guys so much for the comments and your beautifully encouraging words. I read every comment and would like to discuss Tomb Raider and other games with you. Keep writing me, I really do like it. And I'm not saying this in a shitty YouTuber way style. No, I genuinely interested in your guys' opinion. Thank you guys so much for their support recently, and take care.
Light, please.
Pointer here now. Pointer here.
Where's here?
Right at the